This short lecture will focus on the importance of ethical advertising and behavior of a business and how it can affect us as consumers. So why is this a concern, and why is ethics in advertising a concern? And that's because advertising is advocative. In other words, it is expressing the needs of the business and their need to promote and sell their products. Therefore, it's one-sided, and you're not going to hear other sides that because the business is paying for it, it's relatively obvious that they're going to be promoting the attributes of their product. Sometimes it can be intrusive. None of us love advertising, and it's made to persuade the audience. And in the persuasion is where the ethical lines can be crossed. And that's what we're going to focus on. So should advertising be used to inform only, or should it be used to persuade? Well, it's probably very naive to think that advertising should be for information only. So it is there to persuade us. And the advertising decisions are often made by an ad agency. Now, the company who hires the ad agency for their creative ability has the ultimate say in what is acceptable and what isn't, as far as how far an ad should push the attributes of the business. But the ad agency does have a lot of power because they're the ones that are coming up with the ideas, the creative copies, things like that. Will the agency have the same ethical standards as a firm? The answer might be yes, but actually, more often than not, it's no. And the agency is looking to create, to promote, to create a buzz. And it's up to the company itself, the client, to okay or to approve the agency's work. So the company is ultimately responsible for the output. Rules need to be followed. We'll be talking about some of those. Advertising is regulated, but how much is it regulated? Is it regulated enough, or is it too much? This is a key concept to this lecture. This is about the advertising continuum. It goes from left to right. When you look at the left-hand side of the continuum, an advertisement is going to be just sharing information. We very rarely see that because, again, the nature of advertising is it's advocative. In other words, it advocates a business, what they're trying to sell. The extreme other end is outright deception. Somewhere in between is where normal advertising exists. Typically, we want to inform, we want to persuade. So that's going left to right. We want to persuade. We want to talk our audience, our prospects into a favorable position on our product or service. Embellishment is where sometimes the line can be crossed, but most advertising does embellish. They're going to, promote what they offer, the best of what they offer, and they might exaggerate to a certain extent. But deception is the outright behavior of trying to show the prospect something that isn't there. So somewhere in here is where most advertising lives, and we're going to be looking at some examples. Consumers are protected by law from deception. But what about embellishment? I'm going to ask you to go back, if you can, in the slides, because there's a link for just the slides here, and watch the videos if you have time. It shows some examples of where embellishment can sometimes cross the line to deception. And so let's talk about ethics itself. Now, here is a McDonald's ad. When you look at this is the food artist created this. And sometimes when the food artists create a hamburger, there's no actual edible stuff in here. It's more just artificial pieces, and they make it shiny, and they sometimes prop it up in the middle with toothpicks and things like that. And so they're trying to make this look as appetizing as possible. So how can it that this hamburger can fit in this box? And this is the actual box it comes in. This is where embellishment may be coming into play. What McDonald's is held to a standard by the Federal Trade Commission. We'll be talking about them for the US, Federal Trade Commission. The standard is that they have to be honest about what's in the hamburger. If it's a quarter pounder it has to be a quarter pounder of meat. And if they say there's going to be onions and pickles and tomatoes and lettuce, it must have all those within the product. How they make it look is their business. So this is really not illegal. This is not deceptive. This is embellishment. They're making this hamburger look as appetizing and full as they can, but all the ingredients are there in here, but they're just squished down. And this is where, some people would consider like deception, but legally it's really not. Here's where deception comes into play. You've all heard of vitamin water. You've probably had it before. This is a number of years ago, but they had an advertisement that stated that because you're drinking vitamin water, you don't need the flu shot. Now, there's an implication here. They're not saying that directly, but they're saying flu shots are so last year. If they're implying that you don't need a flu shot, that is in more vitamin C immunity, those types of things. The Federal Trade Commission determined this is completely false, and this is mostly just sugar and water and maybe some vitamin C. So they were forced to retract the ad and pay a big penalty. So this is where deception can come into play. Sometimes there's a social influence to advertising. This is probably not a real good message to send out to young men and women. Cheat on your girlfriend, not your workout. This is a statement that challenges ethics, and it was forced to be taken down because Federal Trade Commission said this is really undue social influence, and it's a negative message. When we talk about the Federal Trade Commission, for Taiwan, there's a trade commission, Fair Trade Commission. Japan, there's the Japanese Fair Trade Commission. In France, there's the Directorate General of Competition. And in Germany, there's the Federal Cartel Office. Every country has a trade commission that really looks at what's fair and what isn't. They look at deception, and they look at the potential of deception, and that's what they're focused on. So if it's a high-profile business, the businesses I've showed you so far are high profile in the US, the Federal Trade Commission will get involved in them. However, if it's a small business, generally, if it's a small local business, a complaint needs to be made to the police, and they will then make a claim with the district attorney, local district attorney, and they will file suit on an individual small business. The Federal Trade Commission only gets involved in high profile type businesses. So the Federal Trade Commission determined for ads to be deceptive, three components have to be present. It has to have the capacity to deceive consumers, and form beliefs that may not be true. And it cannot be substantiated by the advertiser. So that's one element. Another would be a capacity to deceive in a material matter. In other words, unsubstantiated beliefs that could influence the consumer's buying behavior. Here's an example of a bracelet that was very popular about a number of years ago. It didn't work. It was a complete ridiculous thing. And they were selling it for $25. The Federal Trade Commission shut this company down, made them pay back everybody. They declared bankruptcy, so the company went down. But this was a deceptive ad. You can see some of the claims that are in there. Another point is that deceptive advertising ads have the capacity to deceive consumers who are acting reasonably. So they're not crazy. They're seeing an ad, they're being influenced, deceptively influenced, and they're acting normally. And they are regular people. So the FTC says if a normal person is deceived by this, it's considered deceptive. So here's another short video I'd like you to watch. And again, I'm not going to do it through Zoom here, but actually ultimately through YouTube. But you should watch this. It gives you some more examples of what we're talking about. There are punitive actions when a business, especially a large company, a high-profile company, deceives. It is considered deception by the Federal Trade Commission. There's punitive actions, cease and desist, pull the ad, corrective ads, and this is where it gets expensive and why it's a big mistake to do this, because for advertisers, because they have to pay for their own corrective ads, and then there's major fines on top of it. So for the Federal Trade Commission to determine that an ad campaign is truly deceptive, the company probably knew it, and they were trying to get away with something. So Listerine was involved in a major suit back a few years ago, where they were promising way too much and it would take away flu germs and all this kind of stuff. And this is another fairly popular product, and they were saying cheat death, antioxidant power of pomegranate juice. Okay, obviously that's deceptive. Would a reasonable person can look at that as this, I'm going to cheat death, I'm not going to die from this? Maybe not, but still. And so the advertising continuum is here, and I'm just going over this one more time. Again, it starts with information, goes to deception. Usually we're somewhere in between. Children are protected. You cannot advertise directly to children under 7 years old because they haven't reached the quote age of reason, end quote. Can children distinguish ads from programs? Probably not. They're not sure where an ad begins or where the TV program starts. So there is no legal grounds for advertising for young children. A company could get in big trouble for that. Now, there's another thing, even for children older than 7, like 8 and up, it's illegal for a business to advertise. Let's say it's a Spider-Man cartoon. They cannot advertise Spider-Man figurines during the commercials, because that's undue influence. And the Federal Trade Commission considers that to be unfair to children. So there are laws protecting children. And so again, 8 years old, I already talked about, can't sell toys during programming. Defenses against deception start to emerge between 8 and 12 years old. But before 8, there's no way you can advertise to children. And should advertisers be allowed to target kids, all kids? Some would say it's a free market. We can do what we want. But the Federal Trade Commission is a governing body that will be monitoring that. Another area, the last area we're going to talk about here is the elderly. Unfortunately, as consumers and just people get older and they get well into old age, they may not be as rational as when they were younger. They're much more trusting of people. They're much more easy to deceive. So there are laws that protect elderly people. Elderly people are getting scammed all the time, and they're still getting scammed. A lot of times it's just from people calling them, pretending to be a relative, or their child, and saying, I'm in trouble, I'm in jail, I need $20,000 to be bailed out. Wire the money to this number. By the way, a lot of people fall for that. A lot of elderly people fall for that. It's very sad. But there is a lot of scams that the government is really watching, because as people get older and there's more elderly people out there, the more chance there is for elder abuse. So that's another area of consumer behavior that's burgeoning, that's growing. There's a short video on elder abuse there if you have a chance to watch that. I wanted to go over two quick rules here. One is the 10-to-1 rule, and this is where businesses need to be ethical, because if they're not and they're deceiving, it is really terrible for the business itself. Because the 10-to-1 rule states that a consumer who has a bad experience or buys a faulty or deceptive, they feel they've been deceived, will tell 10 times as many people about that experience than a good experience. Why is that? That's because consumers expect good. They expect good products, good services. They expect ethical behavior. When they get it, they don't tell people about it because they expect it. But if a bad experience, a negative experience on a product or service or a brand, you will tell 10 times as many people about that. Check it yourself. Last time you had a really bad experience with a business, you told people about that. You told 10 times as many people as you would if it was a good experience or a normal experience. Then the 5-to-1 rule states that if you lose a customer, it costs 5 times as much to find a new customer than it does to keep an existing customer. Therefore, we should be treating our customers ethically. Existing loyal customers are like gold. It takes a long time to build it takes money and time to build their trust and doing all the right things. And when you lose them, it costs 5 times as much than it does to keep an existing than it does to find a new one, because there's marketing costs and all those types of things. It's hard to find loyal customers. So that's the 10-to-1 and the 5-to-1 rule. They may show up on a quiz. Having said that, I thank you for your attention, and we'll see you in the classroom virtually.